What if I told you that the moment you stop playing small, the moment you stop apologizing for your boundaries, for your clarity, for simply being unshakable, some people will quietly declare war on your freedom, not openly, not with fire and fury, but with whispers, with manipulative silence, with tactics you almost don't notice until you do. Have you ever seen how fast the energy shifts when someone realizes they can no longer manipulate you? They don't congratulate you on your strength. They don't celebrate your independence. No, they recalibrate. And suddenly, you become the problem. But here's the twist. It's not really about you. It's about the fear your freedom triggers in them. And that fear is ancient. You see, most people don't want to control you because they're evil. They want to control you because it makes them feel safe. Predictable people are less threatening. Compliant people are more convenient. And people who can be guilt-tripped are easy to manage. So what happens when you stop being easy to manage? They don't walk away. They don't respect your boundaries. They change their strategy. They guilt you. They gaslight you. They rewrite the past in conversations. They spread little rumors with concern in their voices. They frame your peace as arrogance, your silence as weakness, your clarity as being cold. While you're just out here living your life, they're running a psychological campaign to pull you back under their influence. Stoic philosophy teaches us something incredibly clear. True power isn't about how many people you can influence. It's about how few people can influence you. So, let me ask you, are you truly free? Or are you still dancing to the tune of people who manipulate with guilt instead of respect? Are you reacting, or are you choosing? Maybe it's time to break the pattern once and for all. And stay with me to the end, because the final insight will uncover. We dive into the psychology. Let's ground this with a story, one that reveals how subtle, quiet control can destroy a person's peace unless they learn to rise above it. This is the story of Adam. Adam was not rebellious. He wasn't loud, aggressive, or confrontational. He was calm, steady, clear. He walked his own path, not out of ego, but out of alignment. He didn't shout about his decisions. He simply made them and stood by them. At work, he didn't flatter his boss. He did his job well, but refused to be intimidated. In friendships, he showed up fully, but never allowed emotional blackmail. And in family, he had the courage to draw boundaries, even when it made holiday dinners awkward. He assumed this would earn him respect, and for a while, it did. But slowly, things changed. People who once praised his confidence began calling him distant. Friends who admired his calm energy began saying, "He thinks he's better than us." It didn't make sense. Adam wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't even preaching or correcting others. He simply stopped being available for emotional manipulation. And that was enough to turn admiration into resentment. Confused, frustrated, and questioning himself, Adam decided to visit his old mentor, Mr. Carter, a retired businessman known not just for his success, but for his clarity and his uncommon wisdom. "Why is it," Adam asked, "that the more I stand in my truth, the more people seem to turn against me?" Mr. Carter didn't answer. He simply smiled and invited Adam to follow him into the backyard. There were 2 horses, one tied to a post, still and unbothered. The other roaming, freely alert, cautious, fully alive. "Watch," Mr. Carter said. He walked toward the tied horse. It barely moved, calm, even indifferent. Then he approached the free horse. It immediately backed away, eyes sharp, muscles taut. "Do you see?" he asked. "When people can tie you down, they feel safe. But when you are free, when you move by your own rhythm, it unsettles them. Not because you're wrong, but because they can no longer predict or control you." Adam looked at the free horse, not wild, just compromised. "So what do they do?" he asked. "They try to understand." Mr. Carter shook his head gently. "No, they try to break you. Not always with cruelty, but often with condescension. They'll call you difficult, selfish, arrogant. They'll twist your independence into a flaw, not because you failed, but because your freedom reflects their own chains." That night, something shifted in Adam. He went home, and for the first time in years, he stopped explaining himself. He stopped trying to earn permission. He stopped apologizing for his clarity. He stopped letting guilt choose his actions. And in that silence, in that sacred stillness, something powerful took root. Not rebellion, not anger, but peace. Unshakable peace. So what happens after you stop being controllable, after you choose clarity over compliance, peace over people-pleasing? Something fascinating unfolds. The manipulators. Some of them linger. They study your silence like it's a puzzle to be solved. Because not everyone gives up when they lose control. The weak-minded fade out quietly. They ghost you, avoid you, disengage. But the truly strong, they stay. Not to overpower you, but because strength recognizes strength. They don't need to control you to feel safe around you. And that is the difference. Before we dive into the first behavior you should never tolerate, if you find value in these insights, it helps this message reach more people and helps you stay grounded in your own power. Let's begin. Number 1. They try to manipulate you. When people realize they can't control you directly, they often don't back off. They just switch tactics. Instead of trying to force you, they begin to shape you emotionally. They don't grab the wheel. They whisper from the passenger seat, hoping you'll still drive where they want you to go. Why? Because some people aren't just uncomfortable with your independence. They're threatened by it. They need you to be predictable, pliable, programmable. But when you become unshakable, they don't give up. They become more clever. They turn to subtle forms of manipulation disguised as kindness, love, or concern. They say things like, "After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me." Or they flatter you. "You're the only one who understands me. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you." It feels sincere, but it's not about honoring your agency. It's about making you doubt it. And if guilt or flattery don't work, they escalate. They create fake urgency. They dramatize their suffering. They play the victim so convincingly, you begin to wonder, am I the bad guy for saying no? But here's what's actually happening. They're trying to make you feel responsible for their emotions. so you'll give in, not out of respect, but out of pressure. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your shield. Lao Tzu once wrote, "He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still." True power doesn't come from bending others. It comes from standing tall in your own clarity, even when others are desperately trying to twist it. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions: guilt, doubt, shame, fear, because emotion clouds judgment. And when you're emotional, you're easier to steer. But the moment you recognize their tactics and refuse to engage emotionally, you reclaim your power. Think of it like a chess game. Every move they make isn't random, it's calculated. To provoke a response, they'll set traps, play weak, push buttons you didn't even know you had. But what happens if you don't respond the way they expect? What if you stay calm, observant, centered? They lose, because the only way they win is if you keep playing the game. I remember someone I used to know. They were a master at this, always twisting situations just enough to make you second-guess yourself. One day, they asked me for a favor, something I wasn't comfortable doing. So I said no, politely, calmly. They didn't argue, they sighed. That creeping sense of guilt, that subtle suggestion that my boundary meant betrayal. For a moment, I almost explained myself, almost justified my choice, but I caught it. I paused. Then I smiled and said quietly, "I know what you're doing." Just one sentence, but it changed everything. Their face shifted. They tried to laugh it off, but the game was over because I didn't play. That was the last time they tried to manipulate me. And that's the truth. Once you see manipulation for what it is, it loses its magic. It's like a magician whose tricks no longer fool you. You stop clapping. You stop reacting. You stop participating. So how do you deal with people like this? 3 steps. First, recognize the tactics making you feel guilty, anxious, or pressured. Ask yourself, is this truly a request? Or is this manipulation disguised as connection? Second, stay calm, stay neutral. The more emotionally charged you are, the more control they have. Neutrality isn't weakness, it's protection. And third, refuse to play. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You don't owe them a performance. Sometimes, the most powerful word you can say is no. And say it without apology. In the last section, we learned this. Manipulation only works when you react. When you stop explaining, stop defending, and stop carrying guilt that isn't yours, you take back the steering wheel. That's where real freedom begins. But not everyone accepts that loss of power gracefully. Some escalate. And one of the lowest, most insidious strategies they use when control slips through their fingers is this. They spread lies about you. Let's talk about it. When someone realizes they can't bend you through guilt, flattery, or pressure, they don't always confront you. They go behind your back. They twist your words, distort the truth, and start crafting a version of you that doesn't even exist. But here's what's chilling. They do it so convincingly that people who once respected you begin to question. And that's exactly the point. They're not seeking justice. They're seeking control. When direct manipulation fails, they go for your reputation. Because if they can't pull your strings anymore, they'll try to cut the strings that connect you to others. Here's a hard truth. False narratives are not crafted by strong people. They're the weapons of those who feel powerless. People who don't have truth on their side. They exaggerate small things. They edit the context. And in the worst cases, they outright lie. But why? Because they want a reaction. They want you to panic, to defend yourself, to prove your innocence. But the moment you do, they win. Because now you're in the game. Their game. And every word you speak becomes part of the web they've spun. Let me offer you an image. Imagine someone throwing mud at you. If you flinch and try to fight it, you smear it more. It spreads. You end up dirty. But if you stand still, let it dry, and gently brush it off, you stay clean. The mud never becomes part of you. That's how it works with lies. The more you wrestle with them, the more you give them weight. But if you stay grounded in truth, and let your actions speak louder than your words, the mess dries up. It fades. And the liars, they reveal themselves. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes more than just a theory. It becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won." Think about that. Your silence, when rooted in clarity and strength, isn't weakness. It's dominance. Because truth doesn't beg to be heard. It simply continues to exist. And it shines brightest when no one's trying to polish it. I remember a time when someone I trusted began spreading rumors about me. And at first, yes, I panicked. My instinct was to correct every lie, to sit people down, to explain. But then I stopped. Instead of feeding the noise, I chose to focus on the only thing that matters: who I actually am. I lived the truth. I let my consistency speak louder than their accusations. And guess what? Over time, people began to see. The false version of me began to crumble, not because I attacked it, but because it couldn't hold up to reality. And the person spreading the lies, they began to unravel. Because lies, especially emotional, manipulative lies, have short lifespans. But the truth doesn't age. So how do you respond when someone attacks your name? Here are 3 simple but powerful steps. Step 1. Don't engage. The moment you start defending yourself to people who already believe lies, you lend those lies credibility. Step 2. Let your actions speak. Character doesn't need marketing. It's proven through repetition over time. Step 3. Shift your focus. Remember, those who spread lies say far more about themselves than they do about you. Their need to twist your story is a confession of their own insecurity. And here's the truth that grounds it all. False words only gain power if you fuel them with attention. Let them talk. Let them twist. Let them drown in their own drama while you keep walking in peace. Because eventually, the truth always surfaces. Always. And those who live by deception always lose. Which brings us to the next behavior, perhaps the most manipulative of all. They play the victim. When someone can't dominate your actions and can't destroy your reputation, they try something else entirely. They flip the script. They cast you as the villain and themselves as the wounded soul. Because if they can't control you, they'll control how others perceive you. And that's where things get even more deceptive. We just saw how false accusations can be used to poison your name. But what happens when that doesn't work either? What happens when smearing your reputation still doesn't bend your spirit? They change tactics again, and this time it's psychological warfare in its purest form. They play the victim. This tactic is subtle, but dangerous because it doesn't come with blame. It comes with a performance. Imagine this. They cross your boundaries again and again. But the moment you stand up for yourself, they gasp in shock. Suddenly, you're the problem, and they're just the poor soul who was attacked. It's theatrical, it's manipulative, and if you're not careful, it works. The more you try to explain, to justify, to clarify your side, the worse it gets. Why? Because now it looks like you're on the defensive. You appear aggressive. They appear calm, tearful, wounded. It's like stepping into a scene where the script was written in advance, and the moment you speak, you confirm the role they've assigned to you. But here's the trick. If you don't speak, if you don't engage, the illusion begins to crack, because their game depends on your reaction. Don't give them one. People who fake victimhood feed off reactions. They need your energy to validate their story. This is where Stoic wisdom shows us a path forward. Epictetus said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." The moment you allow their performance to trigger you, they win. But if you remain calm, grounded, and focused on what is, not what they claim, you strip their performance of its power. I once had to deal with someone like this. Anytime they were held accountable for crossing a line, they'd twist it one day. After crossing the same boundary again, I calmly stood my ground. I was clear, firm, not rude, just real. But instead of acknowledging it, they acted shocked. They ran to others with stories of how aggressive I was. Suddenly, I was the villain. They were the innocent one. At first, I wanted to set the record straight, to clarify what really happened. But then, I paused. I remembered what they truly wanted. A reaction, a performance, my energy fueling their illusion. So I stepped out of the scene. I stayed silent. I let my consistency do the talking, and with time, people began to see. Because no matter how convincing someone plays the victim, lies unravel, and real character always shines through. So how do you handle someone like this? Here are your tools. First, do not engage. Arguing only makes you look guilty in their scripted narrative. Second, let time expose the truth. Their patterns will repeat, and their credibility will crumble. Third, protect your peace. You don't owe anyone a performance to prove your worth. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stay still long enough to be seen. At the core of it, manipulators weaponize victimhood, manipulators, but only when there's an audience. Take away the audience, and the show falls apart. So your best move: stay calm, stay silent, let reality speak for itself. Because, in the end, the truth doesn't just survive the performance, it outlasts it. And those who build their identity on lies, They always run out of script. If this message resonates, hit that like button and subscribe for more grounded insights. Let's move on to the next form of control, one of the most calculated of all. Number 4, they try to isolate you. Let's break this down. When direct manipulation fails, and their attempts to shame you publicly don't work, they go deeper, colder, more strategic. They try to isolate you, not by confronting you head-on, but by going behind your back, spreading doubts, whispering twisted stories, turning friends, co-workers, even family against you. Why? Because your independence makes them feel powerless. As long as you have strong support systems, people who see through the games, you're harder to control, so their goal becomes simple: cut you off, make you feel alone, make you believe you've lost your tribe, so you'll run back to them. Here's the truth: isolation is a tactic of the insecure, of those who thrive only when they're the center of your world. They can't stand when you think for yourself. So they sow division, a comment here, a twisted story there, all designed to fracture trust, raise suspicion, and create emotional distance. They want you questioning everything. Can I really trust them? Maybe I was wrong. Why do I feel like no one understands me anymore? And when you're isolated, you're vulnerable. You start leaning into the only voice left, theirs. Think of it like a wolf pack in the wild. Predators don't attack the group. They separate the weak one. First, a lone target is easier prey. Manipulators operate the same way. They don't strike when you're surrounded by love, support, and clarity. They wait until you feel cut off, misunderstood, and emotionally exhausted. Then they move in. But here's the good news: once you recognize this strategy, you can outsmart it. This is where Stoic wisdom comes to guide us again. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who uplift you. Avoid those who would pull you down." That's the key. Surround yourself with people who nourish your spirit, not those who feed your doubt. Real allies won't fall for gossip. They'll ask, they'll listen, and they'll stay. The ones who turn against you without question, they were never meant to walk your path long term. I remember someone who tried to turn others against me. It started quietly, little comments. "I don't know. Can you really trust them?" Then it grew. Twisted stories, dramatic versions of harmless moments. At first, I was angry. I wanted to confront, to correct, but I didn't, because I realized something powerful. Attempt to isolate you doesn't work after they see you still connected, still grounded, still surrounded by real support. They don't stop. They simply shift focus again, and this time they go inward. They stop trying to break your relationships and start trying to break your belief in yourself. They challenge your confidence. But before we get there, let's finish the lesson on isolation. I learned something powerful during one of the hardest chapters in my life. The more I tried to defend myself from whispers and half-truths, the more energy I gave them. But when I stopped feeding the fire, when I poured my energy into nurturing the relationships that mattered, something shifted. I didn't need to convince anyone. I just needed to stay consistent, live my truth, and let time do the talking. And guess what? Over time, the fog lifted. People started seeing clearly, the ones who truly knew me. They stayed, the ones who were quick to believe the lies they were never really mine. So what do you do when someone tries to isolate you? Step 1. Stay calm. Every emotional reaction gives them something to twist. The more centered you are, the less oxygen their manipulation gets. Step 2. Nurture real connections. Because people who actually know your heart, they won't be fooled forever. Step. If someone can be turned against you that easily, let them go. Let the leaves fall so new roots can grow. Because, here's the truth, those who fear your independence will always try to weaken your foundation. But no lie, no scheme can destroy what's unshakable. Stay solid, stay surrounded, stay rooted in who you are. Now, let's move into something far more subtle, but no less dangerous. Number 5, they challenge your confidence. Sometimes they won't yell, they won't lie, they won't play the victim or try to isolate you. Instead, they'll start planting seeds, soft, subtle, almost invisible. They'll say things like, "Are you really sure about that? Don't you think that's a little risky? I don't know. That doesn't seem like your thing." And suddenly, you begin to second-guess yourself, not because you're wrong, but because they've inserted just enough doubt to make you hesitate. Why do they do this? Because if they can't control your actions, they'll try to control your thoughts. They won't attack you directly. Instead, they'll challenge your instincts. They'll question your timing, your methods, your judgment, until you start needing their approval to move forward. It's not support, it's sabotage dressed as concern. And the more you pause, explain, or ask for permission, the more control they regain. Because the moment you doubt yourself, you start reaching for validation. And the person you reach for becomes your new compass. And that's how influence is rebuilt. Here's a way to picture it. Imagine you're walking across a solid bridge. You've crossed it before. You know it holds. But as you step forward, someone nearby whispers, "Are you sure about that bridge? Maybe you should wait, just in case." At first, you're confident, but the more they speak, the less sure you feel. And suddenly, you're questioning the bridge, not because it's unstable, but because their voice has drowned out your own. That's what it's like when someone attacks your confidence. They don't shake your foundation, they shake your trust in your foundation. Recognize this tactic and keep walking. Don't pause. Don't second guess. Don't hand over the wheel. This is where Stoic wisdom lights the way. Epictetus once said, "A person's worth is not determined by external approval." True confidence, it's not about getting agreement. It's about honoring what you know, even when others don't see it yet. The moment you stop looking around for applause, you become unstoppable. I remember someone in my life who questioned almost every decision I made. Every time I moved forward with something, they'd tilt their head and say, "Are you sure about that?" Or, "That's bold. Are you really ready for that?" At first, I explained myself. I wanted them to see I'd thought it through, to agree, to feel reassured. But slowly, I noticed something deeper. They weren't questioning to help. They were questioning to inject doubt. And that doubt made me smaller, slower, less sure, until one day I stopped justifying. I stopped seeking their nod. I looked them in the eye. And instead of answering the question, I answered myself, yes, I am sure. In the previous section, we talked about how confidence doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. And it definitely doesn't need permission. It just stands firm. And that's exactly what I did. I stopped explaining. I stopped defending. And when they tried to poke holes in my certainty, I simply said, yes, I'm sure. No more debate. No more doubt. And just like that, the conversation ended. Because real confidence doesn't argue. It doesn't need to. So, how do you deal with people who challenge your self-trust? First, trust your reasoning. If your choice came from clarity, experience, or values, don't let someone's doubt shake that dot. Second, stop over-explaining. The more you explain yourself, the more space you give them to undermine you. Third, remember doubt is their weapon, not your reality. Just because someone questions you doesn't mean you're wrong. At the end of the day, your confidence is your power, and some people will test it, push it, try to fracture it, but only if you let them stand firm, stay grounded, and never let someone else's insecurity become your truth. Now, let's talk about the final tactic. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, number 6. They provoke you emotionally when nothing else works, when they can't guilt you, manipulate you, isolate you, or shake your confidence. They go for the emotional attack. They don't care about the actual argument. They're not seeking resolution. They're aiming for reaction. So they push your buttons, say things they know will cut deep, mock your past, twist your words, insult your character. Why? Because once you react emotionally, they win. Here's the truth. They want you angry. They want you off balance. They want you to explode, so they can claim control of the narrative. And the moment you snap, they turn to everyone else and say, see, I told you, they were irrational. Suddenly, you're the one who looks unstable while they sit back, calm and composed, playing the victim yet again. Think of your emotions like a flame, and their words like wind. The more you react, the bigger the flame becomes, the more fuel you give them. But if you stop feeding it, the fire dies. That's why emotional control is your greatest defense. This is exactly where Stoic wisdom becomes your anchor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that's the key. When they expect rage, give them calm. When they seek chaos, give them stillness. When you refuse to play their emotional game, you rob them of every tool they thought they had. They walk away confused, powerless, and exposed. I remember a moment like this clearly. Someone tried hard to bait me into a fight. They exaggerated situations, brought up the past, even made it personal. I could feel the heat rising, that pull to lash out, to defend, to argue. But I caught myself. I paused. I breathed. Then I looked at them and said, "Interesting perspective." No sarcasm, no smirk, just stillness. And you know what? It froze. Because they were expecting fire. But I gave them no flame to feed on. That moment changed something for me. I realized calm isn't weakness. It's power. Silent power. So, how do you handle people like this? Step 1. Recognize the game. Ask yourself, do they really want a resolution? Or just a reaction? Step 2. Control your response. When emotions rise, pause. Don't speak from the storm. Wait for clarity. Step 3. Choose not to engage. Some battles aren't worth fighting. And some people want you angry just so they can feel like they won. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. At the end of the day, your emotions belong to you. They're sacred. They're yours to command. So when someone tries to provoke you, let them burn themselves out, because fire only spreads when you give it air. Stay calm. Stay still. Stay untouchable, because the strongest person in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one who refuses to be shaken. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Your attention means everything. So drop a comment below with a simple "Thank God" if this video resonated with you. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Your energy is precious. Your clarity is power. And your silence, when chosen, is a force no one can manipulate after you stop reacting. After you stop explaining, and after you learn to stay calm, even when they push your buttons. There's one final pattern you might start to notice. It doesn't always show up loudly. It can come dressed as admiration or coincidence. But pay attention, because when control fails, envy often steps in number 7. They copy you. At first, it may seem harmless. You take a bold step. They take 1, 2. You share an idea. Suddenly, they're repeating it almost word for word, like it came from them. At first, you might think it's just synchronicity. To compete, they're trying to be you. They can't beat your path, so they mimic it. Not out of inspiration, but out of desperation. They want what you have. They just don't want to do the work to earn it. But here's the catch. No matter how closely someone copies you, they will always be a step behind, because imitation can mimic your form, but it can never replicate your essence. Think of it like this. A shadow moves with the light, but it can never glow. It can only reflect, never radiate. That's what copying is. A lifeless version of something real. No soul, no spirit, no originality. This is exactly where Stoic wisdom shines through. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." You are not your words. You are not your achievements. You are the energy behind them. The choices, the perspective, the struggle. Someone can copy your aesthetic, your tone, your strategy, but they can never replicate your mind, your soul. I remember someone who copied nearly everything I did, from my moves to my mindset. At first, it was frustrating. It felt like my work was being stolen in real time. But then, something clicked. I changed direction. I shifted my rhythm. And they froze. Because when you're always following, you forget how to lead. That's when I realized imitation is proof that you're ahead. So how do you handle people like this? First, don't waste your energy on them. If they're copying, it means they're already behind. Second, keep evolving. The faster you grow, the harder it is for them to keep up. Third, remember copying is not flattery. It's insecurity. They mimic because they don't yet believe in their own voice. But you were never meant to be a copy of anyone. And that's your superpower, because at the end of the day, copies fade, but originals last forever. Which leads us to one final truth. One final tactic. Number 8. They wait for you to fail. Not every enemy attacks. Some just observe, smile, pretend to root for you, while quietly hoping you trip. They say all the right things. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. Let me know if I can help. But inside, they're not cheering. They're keeping score. Because your growth exposes their stagnation. And they'd rather see you fall than rise further than they ever dared. Here's the truth. Some people aren't celebrating you. They're studying you, waiting, watching, counting the seconds until you slip so they can whisper, I knew it. I told you it wouldn't last. And when you face a setback, they don't comfort you. They subtly smirk, because to them, your failure is confirmation. But that's where they're wrong, because true success doesn't come from external applause. It comes from inner alignment. And when your roots are deep, no storm can shake you. Picture it like this. A storm rolls in. The wind howls. The weak tree bends, maybe even breaks. But the strong tree, the one with deep roots, it stands still, unmoved, unshaken. That's who you must become. Because the people hoping you'll fall, they're just the wind, noise, pushback, but they have no real power unless you give it to them. This is where Stoic wisdom carries us through. Epictetus once said, do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall. Your focus should never be proving them wrong. It should be growing into your best self, quietly, relentlessly. I had someone in my life who did exactly this. Smiled when I succeeded, but always said things like, I mean, let's see if it works long term. Or are you sure this isn't too much for you? At first, I ignored it, tried to believe it was concern. But when I stumbled, they were the first to say, see, I told you. That's when I stopped seeking reassurance and started walking my path without their voice in my ear. Eventually, I rose. And when I did, their silence was louder than their fake support ever was. So how do you deal with people like this? First, learn to see through smiles. If they vanish when you win and only show up when you struggle, you already have your answer. Second, stop performing for them. Your growth isn't a stage show. It's your life. Third, let success be your proof. Keep going, keep growing, because nothing rattles a critic more than seeing you rise when they swore you'd fall. Some people wait for your downfall like it's entertainment. Don't give them the show. Give them silence. Give them peace. Give them your unstoppable rise. Because the truth is, no matter how loud their doubt, you get to decide what's real. If this video spoke to something you felt, if it reminded you of your strength, your clarity, or your boundaries, then I want to thank you for being here, for listening, for choosing to grow. At SToic Havenway, we don't just talk about philosophy. We live it, we practice it, we apply it to the real world, where resilience isn't a quote, it's a daily decision. If you found value in this message, I'd be honored if you subscribed, joined our community, and helped spread this grounded way of living. Because in a world trying to provoke you, control you, or shake you, you've got what it takes to stay still, to stay wise, to stay you. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay grounded, stay sovereign, and keep walking your path.